What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So for the past couple of years, there's been a lot of speculation around Nintendo and if they would be adding another system to their Switch online service. Well, now it looks like a couple of sources have come out here and are pointing to Nintendo doing just that here pretty soon, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and how one developer is claiming that Insomniac and Sony may have been over-embellishing the idea of that SSD making the game only possible on the PS5, and we're also going to be talking about NetEase and how it looks like they are about to poach a big-time talent from Sega. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Baldo the Guardian Owls. This is a game that came out on Friday, and I feel like a lot of people overlooked it because it was the same day as No More Heroes 3, and everyone was looking at that, checking it out, and even arguing over it. But Baldo the Guardian Owls is a game that people had been talking about leading up to its release, I think because of the art style mostly, and for the most part, there haven't been a lot of reviews getting out there, mostly impressions, and even some discoveries around a game-breaking bug in the game. In fact, this was posted up on Reddit describing their experience where they say, "I saved the game and quit out yesterday upon loading my save. All my additional hearts, money, and orbs are gone. Side quests are still completed, so those hearts can't be regained. Chests still open, so the money can't be regained. In addition, the durability of my shield is completely gone and breaks in one hit when I had maxed durability at the time when I saved and quit." So essentially you're stuck because everything around you is destroying you since your progress was not saved. And it looks like the developers did respond in a Steam thread because this is a bug that is affecting all platforms, where they say, "We are aware of the bug and fixing it. However, despite being frustrating, this doesn't heavily affect the gameplay." So I would say this does affect the game in general, which would also affect the gameplay, considering it's a game-breaking bug that just halts your progress completely, and it's calls from saving the game when you quit out. I mean, I would just stop that statement at, hey, we're fixing the game, hopefully a patch, we can get that out here pretty soon to you, and that's it. You don't really have to say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it doesn't affect the gameplay, just the overall idea of, playing the game and saving your game. Also, now that No More Heroes 3 is out there, it looks like Suda51 is looking forward to some other projects and even has some ideas around maybe a Marvel collaboration. Check this out. This was in a stream where he was talking about some of the ideas he had going forward. We can head over here to nme.com where they say, "Suda explained that the kind of thing I'd love to do is I'd love to work with Marvel, like on a Shatterstar or Deadpool or something very grasshoppery, maybe a Quicksilver title." Oh, Quicksilver would be cool. And we've had a Deadpool game before, but let's face it, Suda essentially makes Travis kind of like Deadpool anyway in No More Heroes 3. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking, and I think Suda51 would have a blast making a Deadpool game. The only issue is working with Marvel. There have been a lot of stories around Disney specifically that it's a lot of work just to get any little thing done for the character, and we'll say Suda likes to do a lot of stuff to his characters in these different games. It puts them in some pretty wacky situations, right, we'll say. But I think Deadpool and Suda51 would be an awesome combination. I would like to see Marvel greenlight that, but we'll see if that's something that could ever happen. At least here, it looks like Suda51 is extending the olive branch to try to make it happen. Oh, and I had mentioned before how some of these larger companies would hire different fans or creators of fan projects and games, or even the modding community, to work on the main game itself and fix different bugs. And it looks like CD Projekt has done that here for Cyberpunk 2077. We can head over to Twitter. This from Tyler saying, "CD Projekt Red has hired members of the Cyberpunk game modding scene to work on official modding support and bug squashing. They've come from teams creating Wolvenkit and RevScript, the only reason mods exist at all for 2077. Amazing." And I mean, this is pretty cool. Why not? Like, a lot of these people who have developed these mods generally do it because they just like the game. Like, there's a lot of passion behind their creations and the projects that they are doing. And it's a good idea, I think, to bring them in for some of this stuff because clearly they're knowledgeable about the game and they probably know quite a bit about different bugs in the game as well, because sometimes we'll see fans release patches for games. That's how we just got Nier Automata into just a working state on PC for the longest time until Square finally fixed that game. So I think this is a good move by CD Projekt Red. It worked well for Sega with something like Sonic Mania, so why not try it here with Cyberpunk 2077? It can't get any worse, at least. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a third system that Nintendo could be adding to their Switch Online service. They have the original Nintendo, they have the Super Nintendo, but what could come after that? Because there have been talks about the Nintendo 64, the Game Boy Advance. Maybe they get out there and they add the Virtual Boy, they tie it all into the Labo VR headset and give people headaches all over again. Well, it does look like there are a couple sources now pointing to one system in particular. Let's head over here to Nintendo Life, where they say in the latest Nate the Hate podcast, known insider Nate Drake talks about Nintendo might be adding Game Boy and Game Boy Color titles in the coming weeks. Nintendo Life does follow up here saying Nintendo Life has also confirmed with its own sources that Game Boy and Game Boy Color titles are likely coming to the Switch Online service very soon. The same insider is far less optimistic about Game Boy Advance titles arriving on the paid online service in the near future, noting how several companies are currently working on re-releases, including Nintendo, who has the Advance Wars remaster coming out this December. We've also not heard anything about the Game Boy Advance titles being included in this update. Now, I did reach out to Nate for a comment, and what he gave back to me, YouTube would consider to be not advertiser friendly. They don't call him Nate the Hate for nothing, but looking at the podcast that Nate had put out and some of the things he talked about, as well as Nintendo Life, I mean, it makes sense, and it makes more sense because there's some disappointment attached in that there wouldn't be Game Boy Advance. I mean, this would be weird if they were like, yeah, they're doing Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. They're gonna fit the e-reader in there somehow, but they're kind of stopping at Game Boy Color. And you know what? That's further than I would have gone. I figured Nintendo would have done something Nintendo-like and just stuck with the monochrome Game Boy. At least, I guess, if they bring in Game Boy Color, they can add in some interesting variety with Game Boy Color-only games, or just take advantage of some of the different color palettes that were introduced with later Game Boy games, like I guess Link's Awakening DX, but Game Boy and Game Boy Color, what games do you think Nintendo would add? The obvious one would be something with Pokemon, like Pokemon Yellow. Just kind of throw that on the service. That would get people really excited, but that also deals with the Pokemon Company, and we know they like to monetize some of this stuff even further, although Pokemon Yellow would be pretty cool on there. Obviously something Mario related, so like Mario and the 6 golden coins. And you could grab like Wario Land, like that's possible to throw that on there. There are a lot of possibilities here. Most likely they'd probably do something weird and throw Tetris on there, but I guess let me know your best guess as to which games they would put on there, and then when would they announce this? Because the biggest thing now is some sort of September Direct. A lot of us are expecting it because we tend to see a Direct in September, and that's pretty much the, I guess the anniversary, or at least renewal period for a lot of people when it comes to the Nintendo Switch Online service. They didn't do it last year where they added another system, but it makes sense that they would do something like throw Game Boy in there and not Nintendo 64, because I think a lot of people are still holding out for the idea of a Nintendo 64 Classic or Mini System, or Nintendo themselves maybe expanding this Virtual Console subscription service into its own application with its own fee that they could then build on with more value when it comes to games. I think they are getting to a point where they're realizing, wow, it's just $20 a year. We're already over 100 games and we're expected to add more on top of that. Are they going to get to a point where they have 200 games for $20 a year? Because for Nintendo and the way they treat a lot of their, we'll say, classic titles, even they are going to think that that is way too much value for the money, despite how poor their online service really is when it comes to features. But Game Boy Color, how do you feel about the idea of that? And then how do you feel about them not adding Game Boy Advance? Would that disappoint you? Because I know there are a lot of really cool Game Boy Advance games, but once again, it's Nintendo, and they're gonna stop it probably right at Game Boy Color just to leave that disappointment for Game Boy Advance games. Next up, let's talk about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, because when we were coming up on the release for this, I did notice some people wonder, could this actually make its way to the PS4 at some point? Sure, it's just coming out on the PS5 now, but we've seen Sony do some backtracking on games that were originally just for the PS5 with something like Gran Turismo 7. Could the same thing happen to Ratchet and Clank maybe post-release with the PS5. Look at something like Godfall. It happened there, right? Where they had said, oh, we need the PS5. The power of the PS5 is what's making this game possible. And then here comes a PS4 version later on. Well, it looks like at least one developer believes that, yeah, this could be done on a system as old as the PlayStation 3. Let's head over to Video Games Chronicles, where they say the founder of Traveler's Tales has claimed that the Rift effects in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart don't need the PS5 SSD to work and could easily have been accomplished on hardware from 2 generations ago. Now, over on the YouTube channel Coding Secrets, John Burton did go in depth with this, with quite a bit of detail as to how this is all done and how it could be recreated on an older platform. They say now they could be using all kinds of solid state trickery to pull these off, but because it's just one rift and it always goes to the same area, this can easily be achieved on older hardware. The pocket dimensions are really graphically basic and in fact just seem to use a lot of the same generic objects like crates that would already be available in generic memory. So it's pretty much a sky dome, a few small platforms, generic objects, and nice lighting. So on older hardware, it wouldn't take much memory, especially as it also uses the generic objects, all of which make it quick to load. The important thing to note here is that none of this is optional, it's forced. This is important because it means you can preload the grind rail section while you're playing the speeder section. In fact, every section of the sequence is both forced and small. You only move across a very small part of the world and have very little ability to even move during this section. This means the game has the whole time you're playing the section to load into the next section. Now, he does go more in depth here as to different techniques and strategies used and how it could be recreated on that PlayStation 3 system, and I encourage you to go check out the full video. It is linked down in the sources below. But once again, it does make me wonder if could there be plans in the future? Let's say this is a thing, right? And yeah, they could figure out how to make it work on the PS4. If you were Sony, would you take Ratchet and Clank and move it to the PS4, backtrack and say, hey, we figured it out, guys. One day we were just kind of messing around and wow, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart now works on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro. So we're just gonna release it there at like $60. That's cool, right? I do wonder if people who picked it up on the PS5 thinking it had to be made on the PS5, it just wouldn't work, would feel slighted, misled even, because there was a lot of hype around this game coming up with that Rift mechanic and how they were playing it up. And like, I'm not a game developer. Like, I'm sure most people who are watching this video are not like at studios working on different games and coding this stuff up. And it is probably easier because you're going to take Insomniac, their word for it, where they're like, well, it can't be done on the PS4 and there's no PS4 copy of it. So most of us figure, well, Sony would put it on the PS4 because they have no problem doing cross-gen for like every other game outside of what, Returnal and Destruction All-Stars, which Destruction All-Stars, out of all of this, is the game that they probably should have made cross-gen because it could have benefited heavily from just having a wider player base. But here we are now with Ratchet and Clank and its overall, I don't want to say gimmick, but its idea and what it's trying to do with the Rift mechanic being questioned a bit if the PS5 is actually required for that. I don't know. Let me know what you think about this one and how you would feel if all of a sudden one day Sony put out a press release on PlayStation Blog saying it's going to the PS4. Next up, let's talk about NetEase and Sega, because it does appear, according to Bloomberg, that NetEase is about to make a pretty serious move in actually poaching a big talent from Sega, a person who is responsible for the Yakuza series, which has become extremely popular for Sega. Very lucrative series now as it moves along here with Yakuza Like a Dragon getting critical acclaim and selling very well. Let's head over to Bloomberg, where they say NetEase Inc. is in final negotiations to poach Yakuza franchise creator Toshihiro Nagoshi from Sega, a sign of how Chinese games companies are expanding beyond their home turf during a government-led crackdown. And this was really interesting as well. There was a recent report that said that China was looking to limit overall playtime by minors. Basically, anyone under the age of 18 would have limited time to play games on like the weekends, where it'd be about an hour per day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then an hour during holidays. So I can kind of understand why NetEase and Tencent might be looking outside of China to create studios to then develop games that they can sell worldwide there. They go on to say Nagoshi, who developed and helms one of Sega's most successful action series, is expected to set up his own team and create new games. People familiar with the matter said he hasn't signed a final contract and his duties have yet to be finalized, they said, asking not to be identified discussing a private deal. And I mean, can you really blame Nagoshi here? Because if NetEase shows up and they have this massive stack of money and they're like, hey, we can fund an entire studio, you can be the lead on any project, you can create it from the ground up, no problem when it comes to money, we'll fund it completely. I mean, maybe he's ready to move on from the Yakuza series and he has an idea for something really cool, and Sega is a bit more, I guess, conservative fiscally when it comes to some of this stuff. I mean, Sega's not a company that's going to take massive risk. The Yakuza series works. I mean, now we have like the Judgment series, and that has worked somewhat. I mean, they're about to have their second in the series here, and that's running into issues when they want to get it on PC, but there's a whole thing with the talent agency. So I wouldn't really blame Nagoshi to go and do this. It's just NetEase looking to flex their financial muscle a bit and, yes, poach a serious talent from Sega. And that would leave Sega in a weird spot, because what do they do with the Yakuza series then when they have the person who's responsible for making Yakuza what it is today leaving? I'm not really sure what happens with Sega and all of that there, but I'll admit it would be interesting to see what Nagoshi would go off to do with that kind of funding and pretty much a clean slate to do whatever he wants. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the UK sales charts, as this gives us our first look as to how No More Heroes 3 did in its debut, with Friday and Saturday being counted. It also gives us our first look at how Aliens Fireteam Elites did after what we saw with Colonial Marines. Here's hoping that Aliens could do a bit better here with this new entry, and we'll take a look at the top 10 with, Aliens Fireteam Elite actually topping the charts here at number 1. And we also have a split here from GamesIndustry.biz. 42% of the sales on the PS5, the Xbox had 31%, and then the PS4 had 27%. Then we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 2. I'm never getting Mario Kart 9. All right, Minecraft at 3, Grand Theft Auto 5 at 4. I'm never getting Grand Theft Auto 6. Spider-Man Miles Morales there at 5, FIFA 21 at 6, Animal Crossing New Horizons at 7, Marvel's Avengers at 8, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut at 9, and then The Last of Us Part 2 at 10. You'll notice that No More Heroes 3 is not in the top 10. That's because it debuted at number 16. And unfortunately, we didn't have any extra data from Games Industry around No More Heroes 3. This is in the UK. I'd be curious to see No More Heroes 3's like hard sales in Japan, where they'll give us an actual number and we can kind of compare to previous No More Heroes entries. I do think No More Heroes 3 is going to end up being the best selling in the series over 1, 2, and obviously Travis Strikes Again. So we'll just have to get more information from other sources, the MPD and Famitsu sales charts as we go along. But hey, Aliens Fireteam Elite, that's really cool to see that series kind of get a bit of a resurgence here after Colonial Marines hurt it as bad as it did there. So topping the charts in its debut week is great to see. And again, we'll kind of keep an eye on No More Heroes 3 as we go along here through the week, looking towards the Famitsu sales next. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a little poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, what did you think about Death Stranding after playing it? 19% said it was good, 7% said it was bad, and then 74% said I wasn't interested and didn't play it. Well, there's, I guess, a ton of potential customers out there for the director's cut that's dropping next month, and I almost wonder if that's why the trailer they showed came off as more of an action game than what Death Stranding really is, especially when you first start playing it, which is the walking package delivery simulator. And that might actually catch some people off guard when they first pick it up, and it's not at all what's being shown there, with a big racetrack in the middle, and they have like this Metal Gear Solid sneaking action sequence. There's some action in the game as you get further in, but when you first start, you're just putting some stuff on your back and you're walking for a while. Some people find it relaxing, others, find it just boring as you go through. But I'll be curious to see the sales of Death Stranding Director's Cut, because it's kind of falling into a spot now where there's not a lot coming out on the PS5 from Sony that's exclusive from like their first party. So maybe people will look at Death Stranding and be like, well, I'll give it a shot now. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Ice Cold Duff saying, speaking of game ratings, does anyone know what happened to the Castlevania Advanced Collection? Would love to hear an update about that game. So I figured this would be a good announcement for Nintendo Direct. It's a series that people obviously relate to a Nintendo platform with the Game Boy Advance. We were just talking about Game Boy games being possibly added to the online service, so we're already kind of being that mood and like, oh yeah, here's a collection of older Game Boy Advance games in this package, and hopefully it also has a physical release, because that would be one I would buy on the Switch, so you have it on the cartridge and all of this. And I thought when we saw that rating, we'd be hearing about it as maybe just like a Twitter drop, a Twitter reveal. Maybe it was at E3, but then we heard from Konami that they wouldn't be there, but they had other projects in the works, and maybe in a couple of weeks here, we can see a reveal for it at Nintendo Direct. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's Game Boy and Game Boy Color games potentially heading to Nintendo Switch online service. Give me your list of games you wanna see Nintendo announce for that one. Also, what about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart? How would you feel if Sony did announce it for the PS4, and do you think that game is actually possible on older hardware? And then what about this whole thing with Yakuza, Nagoshi, Saga? What happens to the Yakuza series if Nagoshi leaves and goes to NetEase? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.